Okay.
Yep.
Okay, you should be broadcasting. Uh, this is Tom and Tom's Radio Room Show. And I got this radio from Jeff. Jeff's been loaning me some of his radios, and it looked familiar, but I wasn't sure exactly what it was. He said it was homemade. I wasn't sure. So I contacted my good friend up in Canada, Scott, who is with me today on the Hangout. Scott has a number of radios like this. He's very familiar with them. He's repaired them, got them in working order and everything. So I'm going to depend on Scott to tell me what this is. So, Scott, say hello.
Hello, Tom. Hello, everybody. Yeah, well, that looks like very typical of the radios home built back in the 1920s. Like Crosley eventually started making his own radios, but he started out selling the parts, and you could buy the front plate, and you could buy the tuning cap and the variometer, and that switch in the middle there is choosing inductance range for the tuning range because the thing didn't have a complete tuning range like you're used to on a radio today. So you selected the various taps on the coil to get the range you wanted to tune.
So,
And then
so
you
what is
well the one on the left, you open the top there, you should see that it's a variable capacitor. And right, so that's giving you the tuning range. And then the one on the right is the variometer, I think they called those things, and it's a moving coil inside a fixed coil, and that is what adjusts the amount of feedback you're giving to the regenerative circuit for the tube.
so
That
this is
also,
so this is a regenerative radio.
yeah. And so one of the key components in the regenerative radio is the grid leak resistor. So there should be a thing that looks like a fuse somewhere.
Oh,
Usually the grid leak resistors were very unreliable, and they put them in like a thing looked like a fuse holder. And because you had to replace them a lot because they couldn't make, it was 1 or 2 mega ohm resistor, which back 100 years ago was a pretty tricky thing to make. So it kind of looked like a glass fuse with a piece of carbon impregnated paper inside. And it was a thing that you had to typically replace on these radios sometimes because they didn't last forever.
what is this little? I need some. I need my little finger to point with, so I don't cover up everything. But right there is a little terminal with a dial and some settings on it, or a scale on it. What would that be?
Geez, I don't know. I've never seen something like that. There might be a variable controlling the heat of the filament because that's another typical thing. I have a one of the first radios Crosley made called a Crosley Pup. I have one of those up on my shelf right above me here. It's a single tube regenerative radio, and it has 3 controls on it. One control is the variable capacitor, which Crosley used a thing called a book capacitor, which is essentially just 2 wooden plates with conductive film on them, and you open and close them like a book to vary the capacitance. The other 2 controls, one of them is the tickler coil, they called it, was like the variometer where you have the moving element inside the fixed element for the regenerative feedback. And then the other control is basically a rheostat on the heater current, the filament current, because back in those days the tubes were directly heated cathode. The filament is the cathode. And so one of the things they did to compensate for the battery that was powering the filament, would, the battery voltage, as the battery went towards its state of being dead, the voltage would go down, and you'd have to increase or decrease the resistance in order to keep the filament current up. So that also gives you a bit of a volume control on the radio as well. You can kind of control the gain of the tube by controlling the filament current. So that might be what that is.
And what
But
is this?
that's
What,
normally what's inside. It's outside the radio is normally the heater control.
yeah, I would think so. So you could, reach that dial down there.
But if it's a homemade radio, he might not have had a hole in the panel to put it,
Yeah.
and so he put it inside.
And what's this tube used for?
Well, that's the regenerative tube. Normally, it's a triode.
triode.
Well, you basically you have the filament, which is the cathode, and then you have a plate and then a grid. And some of those tubes are very valuable. I don't know if you pull the tube out there, you can see what it is. There's a tube, I can't remember whether it's the WD11 or the WD12, but it's a very rare tube. And if you have one in working order, you're best not to use them because they're worth, I think, well over $100.
Wow.
Yeah, but you can substitute the other one, a WD12, I think maybe it is, I can't remember which one is the valuable one. And also there's an adapter that you can get to use in these old radios that use that old tube, and you can put like a OT 1A tube, the typical tubes that are in the a lot of the TRF radios of the day. They use the OT 1A tube. It's a 6-volt filament, and uh, they're very common. You can get them for like $10 or less, and you can use one of those with this adapter for the socket.
So this down here looks like, whoops, looks like some kind of resistor strip here.
That might be something that they would use to, because it's a home-built radio. You don't have the convenience of a factory-built unit, right? So that might be how the guy would adjust his filament current with a new battery. And then as his battery wore down, he would get in there with a screwdriver and slide that along to adjust the filament current.
Yeah, it's connected to one of these terminals. There's 4 terminals here.
Yeah, typically you're going to have one terminal that's the ground or the common, and then you're going to have one for the filament voltage, one for the plate voltage, and then quite often there's another terminal that's the bias, and you would put like a C battery at like negative 5 volts or something there to give it the negative grid bias to limit the plate current.
And then on the front, there's looks like a headphones jack here.
Right.
And then these are terminals, maybe for an antenna.
Yeah, on my radios from Crosley, the terminals on the front are for the antenna.
Okay.
And
so
that knob
goes directly to this coil, or yeah, one of the terminals goes to the top here, and the other one goes, looks like the ground, because all the wires are connected to a ground point.
Right. That little knob in the bottom in the front there, that's very likely the one that controls the filament current. I just noticed that when you had the radio showing the front.
Okay.
You got a knob at the bottom in the middle.
Yeah.
That one's very likely the one that controls the filament current. That's what their arrangement looks like on most of my Crosley radios.
Yeah, it's concentric knobs there.
Oh, it's 2 knobs.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. So that's interesting when you look at it. Like what's the control on the inside?
Let's see. Oh, I'm not sure. Oh, there's a wheel with a, looks like a coiled small, let me get it in the picture right. Coiled spring there on that wheel.
That's very likely the rheostat for the filament current. Yeah.
Yeah, it looks like a rheostat coil. Yeah.
But is it actually 2 coils or two controls?
Let's see. Let me try turning it. Actually, the small center one is turning this inside loop. See if I'll do it right now. See, it's almost like, oh, now it stopped. Made a liar out of me. I guess maybe, I was probably bumping the big one there.
Oh, yeah, there you go, yeah.
But it does, trying to see.
It might be, since it's a home-built radio, the guy just used whatever control he had laying around, and he used a dual control for one of its functions, and the other one's not connected.
No, it does move individually. The bigger one here turns that, oops, that big wheel, which you're saying is a rheostat. And then the small one, there's another little dubachi in back of that. My finger's in the way. In back of that, that turns by itself. Oops, wrong knob. So there's just two. Let me get a pin here. Let me get, whoops. The video I look at on my screen is always backwards. That's difficult. Okay. There's right there on this, on the end there is the knob, the outer knob. And if you watch the screw, it'll turn. See it turn?
Right.
That's that one. And then the inner one is the rheostat right here, the big wheel, which I will turn if I can. You see the spring move? Oops, let me get it closer to the camera. See that spring move?
Right.
And it also looks at, when I'm turning the big one, both of them move. But if I turn the outer knob, only the one that you can see a screw is moving.
Is there anything connected to that part? Is that just sticking out the back of the?
Looks like it's just sticking out the back. No, I don't see anything connected to it.
Yeah. Well,
I take that back. Let me set this down for a minute. I dropped my pen. Yes, you are correct. There are two connections, and I'll show you them. Try to show you them. Right here, two connections. If I get this back up where you can, there we go. You can see it. You can see there's two brown wires, and there's two connections. There's a tab light right there, and then there's another one. Everything's backwards on my screen. There. And they both have.
Those are the two connections to the rheostat?
Oh, yeah, yeah. So I'm still not sure. It's almost like it's kind of a fine tuning on the rheostat because it is a part of the rheostat assembly.
When you turn the other one, does it move the rheostat at all?
Sometimes it does, and maybe it just goes. Okay, no, it normally does not. When I turn I'll call it the outer one right here, the big one with the spring does not move. But if I turn the big one, the whole assembly moves.
Right. Yeah, because the other one is just going through the center and it's just turning because of the friction.
Yeah.
It looks to me like it's most likely the guy just used whatever parts he had kicking around, and that's what he had for a rheostat.
Okay.
Why don't you pull that tube out of there and see if you can read a number on it? It might be a really valuable tube.
Get a cloth so I don't put my fingerprints on it. I'm always told you don't want to do that. No, it's not coming out very easy.
Oh, yeah. No, those ones I think you have to push and turn. It's a kind of a band, kind of a style.
Okay.
It's weird kind of a little thing.
Yeah, there we go.
It's got the little thing sticking out the side.
Look at those funky connectors.
Yeah. Yeah, there's an adapter you can get for that kind of socket that you can put a regular 1A tube in.
Am I supposed to be able to read a number?
Well, it might be on the base.
Oh, yeah. UV-199.
Okay, that's not a super rare tube, but
Oh, I don't have to worry about breaking it.
yeah. I can't remember what the filament voltage is for that, but you can look up the specs on that tube, find out what the filament voltage is, get the pin out on the base, check to make sure the filament's not open, and you can even power this thing up with a couple of power supplies. Normally, you'd only need like a 5 or 6 volt is typical for the filament, and then a lot of these radios would work with only around 20 volts for the plate.
Really? Huh.
Yeah, like my Crosley Pup, which is very similar to this, only in a little metal case with a single tube. It'll run with 3 9-volt batteries in series as the plate supply.
I'll be darned. Get that back.
And that thing there, you might have to burnish those contacts a little. Maybe
Yeah.
might be some, but because you just fiddle around with that thing and turning the tuning knob, and try and find a local station where you can pick it up, because the range is pretty narrow. So that's why you have all those steps.
Okay.
Just picking different points on the coil.
And do you have any idea what frequency it would tune?
Well, it should tune the normal AM band as we know it.
Okay. Pretty cool. I'm going to switch. I'm going to switch over to Scotty because he's got a cool radio showing on his camera, and I want you to just take a few seconds and tell me what it is. Tell us what it is right here.
Well, that's just where my webcam is normally pointed. I don't normally put my ugly mug on the internet.
That's no problem. Tell us about, just for a few seconds, tell us about that fantastic radio you have there.
Well, this is a radio I've had now for about a year and a half. ICOM R8600. It just came out August of, would it be August 2017, maybe? And it was a cool story because I had ordered it from the local radio store called Radio World back in the January of that year when it was first announced, and they had no idea when it would come or how much it would cost. And the original price that it came out at was $3,000, but by the time they got it in stock, the price was $3,500. But because I had ordered it several months earlier, they gave it to me for the discounted price. And they included a power supply with it, which I didn't think it came with. It runs off at 12 volts, and they included the external supply for the thing. It's a pretty cool radio. It's got lots of functions, way more than I normally use. I just normally use it for shortwave, but I've tuned in a few higher frequency things. I have it connected to a disc cone up in the attic, as well as my Alpha Delta DX SWL in the backyard. And I have managed a couple of times to tune in the space station on 145.8 when they're transmitting their slow scan TV, but it's pretty difficult because it's got to be a pretty close pass in order to pick it up.
Yeah. All righty. And Scotty, your YouTube channel is?
It's called the Scotty TR6.
All righty.
It's a pretty small channel, nothing compared to what you've got there with your thousands of subscribers. You got a much more interesting channel than I do.
Oh no, but you got really exciting.
Well, you've got a pretty good collection of radios too. You just don't normally haul them out.
Okay, well, Scott, I thank you very much. I was completely lost what this was, and again, I thank Jeff for loaning me these radios, and this one is very unusual.
Tom, if you go onto the internet there and look up a schematic for a single tube regen radio, you'll find probably 2 or 3 different schematics, but they're very, very similar, and you'll be able to trace this one out very easily with it. And once you see the circuit and you see how it works, it kind of makes sense. But you'll have to go through there and identify the components and make sure that the grid leak resistor is there and it's proper. You can just stick a modern 1 or 2 meg resistor in place of it if you don't have the old one that looks like a glass fuse like we would use nowadays, and maybe get it fired up.
Okay. Thanks a bunch, Scott. And thanks everybody for watching. Have a great day. Bye bye.